All right, so before we get into today's episode, I just want to say something real quick. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in, listening to the podcast, sharing clips, leaving comments, and reaching out in the DMs. You see, when I started Word Forward, right, I honestly didn't know what this was or what it was going to become. You feel me? I just knew that there were types of conversations that I wasn't hearing enough of. Ones about growth, family, failure, pressures of life, your purpose, all of the real stuff. So, with us being 17 episodes in now, I'm getting messages from people saying, yo, I really needed that. Or I felt like you were talking directly to me. And that's not something I take lightly for real. This was never about becoming the largest platform. It was only about building something real and honest, something that actually helps people move forward in their life. So if you've been rocking with Word Forward, whether it's been since episode 1 or you just found me on your timeline last week, I really appreciate you. You're helping me build this thing too. Now, with all that said, let me ask you something real quick. Are you really ready to be seen? Or are you just ready to be agreed with? Because those are two completely different scenarios. A lot of people say that they want to be heard for real, in their circles, in their families, maybe at work, in their relationships, but to me, that actually means that they want to be heard and supported simultaneously, not challenged, not questioned, and definitely not misunderstood. This might seem like visibility at first, but it's more like a comfort zone with an audience attached to it. And you see, that comfort, it doesn't help you grow. Protection and growth, they don't always move in the same direction on command. So, which one are you actually chasing? Welcome back to Word Forward, y'all. I'm Damien J and real talk, I didn't plan this episode. I had something else mapped out altogether. But then life gave me something better to speak on. Something happened to me in real time, right? And when I sat with it, I was like, nah, this is the episode right here. Because this isn't just a creator or a builder type of thing. Anyone who ever decided to stop shrinking, stop performing, and actually start speaking to their manifestations plainly, you'll have to face this moment. It's the cost of being heard for real. So let's get into this. All right, so here's what happened, right? I'm posting clips. I'm staying consistent. I'm sharing everything that I'm learning, no gatekeeping. Nothing crazy, just a normal daily grind. Comments are coming in. People are relating to the posts. And I see some real support starting to happen. Some jokes here and there, normal interactions with the content. And then I see it. Sure, let me take money advice from a guy with only 26 videos and 46 subs. This was a real comment, y'all. A real moment. And I'm not gonna lie, for a second, I almost felt the burn from that. Not enough to stop the production, but enough to notice what was actually said to me. Because, that kind of comment isn't about the message that you have. It's basically somebody trying to use your starting point against you. Like, your not yet means you shouldn't be speaking at all on any platform. And, I want to slow this down real quick, right? Because this part actually really matters. It's what the comment opened up in my head. It's not a door of a heated response. It was more like a quiet one. The kind that sounds exactly like your own voice. You're saying those reasonable things to yourself. Should I have actually waited? Should I have built more visual proof first? Should I have come back to the whole podcasting thing after I had built a bigger community first? And that thing about the voice in your head, it doesn't feel like the fear is moving in. It feels like wisdom. It all sounds measured, calculated, patient, like you're being smart by pulling away from your own motion. But I caught it, right? And I recognized it. It was just more fear in the suit. Real wisdom says, adjust your approach. But fear says, stop showing up altogether. One of those keep you moving. The other one will get you stuck. And look, I wasn't about to let some stranger with a 46 sub comment decide which one of those I was actually listening to. So I said plainly in a reply, everybody starts from somewhere. I'm just documenting my own journey. And then I closed the app. I left it there. And then something else happened in that same moment. You see, right after that, somebody else stepped in. That person didn't know me. They didn't know me anything. And they just said, keep going. The real ones hear you out here. And then they subbed me right after that. A stranger, the same post, same moment, two completely different realities happen. And that's exactly when it clicked for me, right? Not because the support felt real, even though it actually did genuinely feel good, but it's because I saw something clear for the first time. Visibility doesn't give you a filtered audience. It gives you everybody. And the moment you stop being agreeable, right, and you start being honest, you don't just meet up with the support side, you meet up with the resistance too. And the resistance that you get, it doesn't always mean that you're wrong about what you're saying. Sometimes it means that somebody felt exactly what you said. Because if people didn't feel what you say, nobody would react to it. And for real, I want to sit with that for a second with y'all. Because I don't think people talk about what reach actually does and what reach actually feels like. You know, when it actually starts to kick in. Not in the metrics sort of way. You know, the honest one. I noticed that when somebody sends you a message, a person that you've never met, this feels like it was made for me. That's just not a tally, right? That's a person who actually was somewhere carrying something and your voice landed right in their moment. And once you figure that out, you know, you can't unknow it. For the next time you think about digressing, scaling down, waiting until you're known to say the things that you want to say, you have to weigh that against the person who needed the version of you that you're thinking about hiding right now. Those people exist. You just haven't met them yet. Your silence is the decision that affects that outcome. Whether you intended it or not, you know, most people think visibility is about them. You know, the followers, the views, the recognition that you get. And, you know, for real, there's nothing wrong with wanting those things to help you grow. But it's the mindset that actually sustains you, you know, when those numbers are slow and the pullback is loud. It isn't what the platform gives you. It's what you're giving to who's ever on the other side of that screen. And that's the kind of win that doesn't dry up, even when the algorithm shifts up on you. You know, the moment that your voice reaches other people, it reaches all of them, not just the ones that relate to your message. Every single person at the same time. The ones who feel it immediately because they were waiting for that kind of point of view. It's the ones that support you because they show up to your community whether you're there or not. And it's the ones that question your ideas. And that's not always pushback because a lot of times that sharpens you. And then you can't forget about the ones who don't get it altogether because those people, they actually feel compelled to enlighten you about their opinion. And that fourth group, that's not always a problem with your message. Most times it's proof that you're reaching. You know, people think the goal is to say something and have zero negative responses, total harmony with the message. Everybody is applauding for you, right? But that's not true reach. I just call that invisibility with good manners, right? When everything that you put out gets that polite nod and nothing else, that's a small room with familiar walls. It's no new audience finding you at the door. Indifference, that's the real sign that you haven't broken through for real. But when they both collide, the people who needed the message and the ones who dismiss your message, that just might be your message working exactly the way it's supposed to be working. You see, if you're not ready for all four of those, you're really not ready to be heard yet. You might be ready to be liked, but only one of those will help you grow. And if you're just getting started, right, listen, you can't count my timeline against the one that you count for you. You have to count your own timeline. Somebody's always going to look at your numbers, right? And try to use them against you. Your followers, your views, your age even. There will always be something to critique about you. The numbers are public. The process that you're going through is in private. And people only judge the snapshot without understanding the full story. They're just looking at the frame, but you're out here living the movie. And here's the part I need you to be honest with yourself about, for real. The hardest thing about creating, right, isn't always the work that's involved with it. It's watching other people see the gap you're in. You know, the gap between where you are and where you're trying to go. And onlookers, right? Onlookers decide what that gap reads to them about you. A lot of people don't want to wait to see how your build looks when it's complete. They'll just call it out where it is. And it's a real dangerous thing when you start to believe them. They won't need to have the evidence against you, all because they said it with enough confidence that it sounds like credibility, even when it's just full of emptiness, you know? What I learned about the people that's doing the critiquing part, you know, the people that are in the middle of their own build and their own real process, they're not spending their free time dismissing other people who are trying for real. They don't have time for that. They're really locked in on their thing. The people that have the time to critique you at your starting point are usually stuck at their own beginning, right? They're using your not yet to avoid looking at their own never started. And you need to understand that part, because a dismissal is often a confession, right? You'll stop taking it personally and you'll start seeing it for what it actually is. And that first dismissal, that first, who are you to say that? It's out there waiting in the crowd for you too. That's not a maybe. The question isn't whether it will happen. The question is, who will you decide to be when it does? Because this is where people usually shut down, right? It's not because they weren't good enough. They just weren't ready for the hate hitting them this early. You know, that first comment, the moment where you finally say something real and somebody tries to shrink you, that's the moment. And what most people don't realize is not the comment that stops them. It's the decision that they make quietly inside themselves, right after hearing it. Nobody sees that decision. Nobody knows how it happens. It just changes your whole trajectory, one small fold at a time. And once you fold, it's easy to fold again. All the way up until staying quiet, it seems like the smart play, the safe play, when instead it's the most costly one. Those people that want to hear what you have to say are going to be quieter than the people that are trying to stop you from speaking. They're not in the comments, but they're definitely watching you, and they're guaranteed listening to you. And they're sitting there waiting for someone to help you stop. But let them keep waiting for that. See, I want to be honest with something with y'all, because I think this deserves a full picture. Staying locked in costs something, but not in a dramatic give up everything type of way. In a daily chipping way that nobody talks about. It costs the days you post stuff and hear nothing back and have to decide, are you going to post again anyway? It costs showing up even when you're tired, even when the numbers are flat, even when it's too much noise in your own circle, when the effort isn't matching the results just yet, and you still don't know if it will. That's not a highlight reel moment. That's just a Tuesday. And a lot of people drop off right there at the Tuesday or the quiet Wednesday when nothing is happening and nothing is confirming that you're on the right track. You still have to choose to keep going based on purely what you believe is possible for you. That's actually the hardest part of building anything, you feel me? It's not the haters. It's not the comments, and it's not the algorithm. It's that random day. And I'm not going to tell you that those days get any easier. The only thing that really changes is your relationship to the process. you start understanding that the heckling is part of the process. Showing up when there's no visible reward for it is also part of the process. That's the thing that builds everything, right? Your belief eventually makes every single thing else possible. You know, the cost of being heard, it really isn't just the criticism part. It's the consistency that's required, right? To get to that point where your voice reaches anyone at all. You know, a lot of people aren't willing to pay that toll, which means if you are, then you're already ahead of the line. You know, most people aren't afraid of their own voice. They're really afraid of what happens when they actually use it. And that first time using their voice costs them something. They'll learn to stay quiet and grow small until the silence feels a little bit too safe. But you know, silence never grew anything. It just protects your voice from actually mattering to someone. So let me say this clearly for y'all. Being heard, it comes with noise. That's the deal. Not sometimes, every single time. For somebody that's trying to build anything, just because that audience is starting to question you, it doesn't mean that you're saying anything wrong. Just because someone doesn't understand you right away, it doesn't mean that your message isn't valid. It just means that you're early to your own success. That doesn't mean that you're unqualified for it, though. It just means that you're early. That's all. And anybody and everybody who's ever made it for real, they was early too. There's a big difference between the ones who make it and the ones who don't, though. They never let someone else's opinion determine their direction. I know this episode is for somebody right now who almost let that one comment, that one conversation, the one "who are you to say that," become the reason they stop being great. So yeah, I didn't plan this episode. The internet planned it for me, and I'm glad it happened because this is what building actually looks like. If you're out there building something right now, don't let that first moment you see resistance be the reason that you stop. Because the moment that your voice reaches people, you don't just reach your audience. You touch on everything that comes with winning. You need to pay the cost of being heard because staying silent, that's going to cost you more. And if this episode hits you, send it to somebody who's been building in silence right now. They probably need to see this more than you think they do. Follow Word Forward on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and drop a comment, right? And let me know something. What moment almost made you stop? I want to hear those, and I'm going to respond to a lot of them. The inner circle's in the description so we can dig deeper into these conversations. This is Word Forward, y'all. See you in the next one.